I have always been interested in puzzles, and I think that at its base, what marketing is figuring out what people want and delivering the right message to help them determine that that's the right choice for them.
Well, hello, everybody. How are you doing, Dee?
Hey Adam, I'm doing good. It's a beautiful Wednesday.
It is a beautiful Wednesday over here, even though you're in a whole another spot. Summer hasn't decided to leave us yet, but today
No.
is a little bit milder. I was trying to, before our conversation started here, move my standing desk up. So everything is aligned with my noggin, and I have found that I am keeping my desk a little too close to the wall. So as it goes up, it's getting caught, and then suddenly a chunk of paint comes flying off the back of the wall because I've left it there. I guess apparently I need to move it up and down a little bit more often. So my tip is, oh, do you have a standing desk as well?
Adam, I joined the club. I did it.
When did you get a standing desk?
I did it. Mike got me one actually for my birthday, which was a couple months ago. And we've just been rearranging things in the cloffice, which is our closet office. And we finally made room for it. And I am the representative in my household that likes to build these sort of things. So built it on Monday, made my little station all set up and got it built. I love a good challenge. I love a puzzle. I love the build.
But do you actually like to build those things?
Yes,
Really?
it brings me joy. It's like really satisfying for me. I'll read the instruction manual and everything. It's pretty thorough.
Well, you called it a puzzle, and technically, a good piece of furniture when you're putting it together should not be a puzzle because you're
Right.
getting instructions. I mean, if it's a puzzle, you're you're doing the guy thing of throwing away the instructions and being like, I can do this, and then trying to figure it out from
True.
there. But are you a puzzle person?
I'm a huge puzzle gal. Yes. Yes. I was one during lockdown where we had multiple puzzles going. I mean, it drove my husband nuts. He hates clutter and all that kind of stuff, but it brought me so much joy.
Well, there's either the puzzle people or they're not puzzle people. I don't know if that's the right way to say
It
it,
is
but
polarizing. Puzzles are polarizing.
like I'm technically, I mean, I think it depends on the type of puzzle you're talking about. If you're thinking of the traditional, I'm going to throw 1,000 pieces on a table and
Mhm.
try to find, where Waldo is amongst a million other people and like, build the edges and all that sort of stuff. That's not me. I can't do it. I think my son and my wife, they've done it a couple times and they seem to enjoy it. But I think like you're either in that camp or you're not in the camp. If we're talking like Zelda or a video game or something like
Right.
that, that's a bit of a different story. But you like traditional
I love
puzzles?
a puzzle. I love a puzzle. I love to build the seat. I make the border first, organized by shape or color, and then you get your beautiful holiday scene of kittens at the end. It's very exciting.
And then what do you do with the puzzle when you're all said and done?
Okay. All right. You sound like my husband.
Have you
You
gotten
break
one
it
of
up and
those?
put it in the box.
Oh, you say, do you have one of those mats where you can roll it all up and put it away?
Yeah. Yeah, we do, but then, when you want to do your next puzzle, I don't know. It's a little too far to start framing your finished puzzles. Like that's where we had to draw the line in my house, but yeah, I love a puzzle.
Well,
I
my
love it.
tip is if you want to go frame the piece of art, cut it out of the front of the box and then you can work with that. You don't have to
Okay.
go through all
Okay.
the.
Thank
Well,
you.
speaking of puzzles, maybe that's why you like marketing so much. It's very much these days like putting a puzzle together, except for every few months it could be a new puzzle for every single client that we work with or every business that folks are working with. Do you think that that has any merit?
No doubt. No doubt. I think of marketing like one of those like 3D foam stick puzzles where you kind of are building something and then there's all that dark voided space underneath. That's like marketing to me.
What do they call it?
The
Like
mystery
we
underneath.
go away from puzzles into games where they call it like playing three-dimensional chess or something like that, they said.
Yeah.
Uh, well, and so why do you think that it feels that way?
I think that there's the clear creation of whatever puzzle you're putting together. You get the pieces, they only fit in one spot. It's very systematic. But I think marketing's more like that 3D puzzle where you're like, what's under there? What's going on behind the scenes? Because there's all that, dark funnel ways, touch points that happen in marketing that you can't attribute anything to, but they're there and they're important. And that's that dark area underneath the 3D puzzle.
You make it sound so ominous, the dark. I mean, I know they call it dark social, dark, dark web and all that sort of stuff. But coincidentally, today we're going to be sharing my interview with Sarah Lambert, who actually talks about marketing as being a puzzle in her mind, in connecting with what people want and how to deliver that right message and try to make those things click together. And I'm excited to share this conversation with you. There's so much cool stuff that she shared, and I learned a lot from it. Sarah is currently the VP of marketing at Investify, and she's worked a whole bunch of different startups and other companies over the last number of years, and including doing some fractional work and stuff as well. So she's got her, I think folks that get to work with a number of companies like that, especially in the fractional sense, get to bring together a lot of institutional knowledge. And that probably helps you with your marketing puzzle solving a bit, don't you think?
I think so. And I'm almost 100,000% certain that Sarah probably explains the puzzle analogy a little better than I did, but you know how it goes.
Well, let's see about that. Let's start sharing my interview with Sarah Lambert. Hi, Sarah. It's so wonderful for you to join me here. Where are we talking to you from?
I am in West Suburban Chicago. So I am actually just moving into a new place. So forgive the mess behind me. But yeah, Aurora, Illinois.
Moving is always fun. I'm sure that you would much rather be doing that than talking to me right now. It's so happy that you were able to join me. I want to talk with you a little bit about you. I want folks to be able to learn a little bit about you, the mysterious Sarah Lambert. I'm sure everybody's called you that, right? The mysterious Sarah Lambert. Can you give me a little idea of how did you get into marketing and a little bit of your journey there?
So I went to college for marketing. So I'm sure my parents are super pleased that I've been using my degree. But I have always been interested in puzzles. And I think that at its base, what marketing is figuring out what people want and delivering the right message to help them determine that that's the right choice for them. And that's when the puzzle pieces sort of come together. So I've been, soaked in marketing strategy from the very beginnings of that. But I actually had some really great internships. And then, to be honest, I had an amazing job coming out of college and they rescinded the offer because it was right after the dot-com bubble burst. They had to lay off a ton of their staff. So it's been a little bit of a wild ride for me. But I think marketing is such a varied field that if you are a curious person in any way, shape, or form, you can kind of navigate your way in. So, I started, coming out of college, and I actually worked at a couple of agencies, not straight out of school. And that really, I have to tell you, anyone who's worked in an agency has been through hell and back. And I was actually chatting with a former colleague of mine. He was like, if I'm going to hire anyone to work with, I want to know whether or not they've worked at an agency, because then you really know whether or not, they can get through it. So I worked at a couple of agencies, did some, really heavy focus on integrated marketing. and we were very fortunate to have a fully functional agency. So we had PR internally, creative, digital,
Versus a
everything.
dysfunctional agency, right? Which, that's.
Oh, let's be honest. Every agency is dysfunctional, right?
I'm not saying a word at all. Like
No.
as an agency owner, I'm not saying a word.
Yeah. Well, let's just say that back then things were still a little bit more old school. So,
Yeah.
I left agency life and went client side, and I have been working my way through that ever since. I worked a lot in HR tech for a long time. I think it's a really, really unique space, and it has blossomed a ton over the last 15 years. And I've worked at mostly in the fintech space in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. Um, I've really been fortunate to have such a unique path through all of these different opportunities, that I've worked at really, really big companies like Oracle and Manpower Group, and really, really small companies, like less than 10 people. So um, it's been a very unique experience. And I've really kind of found my place found myself in a place now where I just love what I do every single day. And when people, a lot of people are like, oh, I hate my job, whatever. I'm like, oh, that sucks for you, right? Because I love what I do. But yeah.
Well, and you almost like could read my mind, because as you were talking about that, I was wondering, was there ever a time early on where you didn't love what you do, or that you were still sort of questioning, like, oh man, like maybe that wasn't the right degree to get, or what? I mean, obviously people go off the beaten path a lot, but was there ever a time back then that you felt that way?
No, actually, when so my first job out of college was actually in the client services, sort of like project manager sort of space, because that was the only job I could get at the time. So it wasn't actually in marketing. Um, and while I didn't love what I was doing, because I am not a salesperson and I don't ask for the close, that's just never been me. I did learn a lot about how to talk to clients and figure out how to activate what they wanted to achieve. And so by listening to the salespeople and better understanding how to have a consultative conversation, I became really, really good at being that account exec. And then later to be able to help my internal clients and teams better understand, okay, the engineers are saying this. How do we turn that into something that a customer really cares about? And so I think, even though I didn't love it, it definitely gave me sort of some foundational skills for sure.
And you started to talk about like, especially on the technical side. I mean, you talked about fintech and HR tech and everything nowadays that's getting pushed with the letters TECH at the end of it. Took a while for me to make sure that I was saying the right letters in my head. But so much driven by technology, and in a lot of cases, and like what you're talking about, right? Like part of the stakeholders, both within your organization as well as the folks, around the product and around understanding what the problem is it's trying to solve, they're all very, very technical, and they speak a particular way. And then ultimately they speak the same language as somebody, at least, that's probably on the buying committee, if not the end buyer at the other company. So, and I find that very interesting, because in my experience as well, like it's always gratifying when we hear that I understand enough about a particular space or a product or a service, especially with the more technical, that leans in the more technical direction, that you're able to speak sort of multiple languages. You turn into a polyglot of you got to talk to sales in this particular way, and the executive team in this particular way, and marketing and sales, and then ultimately also the engineers. What nut do you feel like you cracked, or how did you figure out, like what you were just describing, how to make sure that you were bringing those folks into the fold and translating the language of that particular part of the organization into what you're doing in marketing?
Well, at the heart of what you just described is who I am as a person, which is a product marketer, right? And I spent a lot of my career being a product marketer, thinking about how the message should cascade throughout the organization, and also ensuring that there are these feedback loops so that we can make that message richer and more impactful. And exactly to your point, different parts of the organization need to hear a different part of that message. And so really, I think where it started for me actually was as an account exec at one of those advertising agencies, working with someone, a client at Diebold, actually. Um, uh, I became an ATM snob after working with them, by the way. But what I will say is I learned very quickly that they had put some engineers into their marketing department. And what their engineers wanted to do was just, let's say for spec sheets or brochures, they just wanted to cover the entire thing with text. And it was my job to help them understand that white space is a good thing, and that in order to engage the buyer, who may not be as technical as they are, they
Yeah.
need to focus on value and benefit and then support those things with the technical. And so very early on in my career, I learned that you have to figure out how to help whomever you're working with feel listened to and validated, but also to help guide them to a place where they're going to get the result that they want, which is ideally
Mhm.
more sales or more interaction or better brand awareness, but also using the right channels and tools to get there. So I think I learned very and frankly, same thing as an account exec, you have to take what the client says and turn around to your creative team and say, I realize you probably think this is super boring, but let's figure out a way to make this beautiful and make them feel good about it, and also get their buyers to be interested. So you have to figure out the best way to help that creative team. And I would actually liken technical teams internally to those creative teams at agencies, because they think completely differently than, let's say, a VP of sales at an organization where you're trying to sell something,
Yeah.
or the chief product officer.
How did your experience as an AE most impact? You talked about a little bit of it, right? But how did your experience as an AE most impact what happened as you started to go more and more deeply into marketing?
I think the thing that it taught me most was how to listen, which, you know, outside of writing, I think is the hardest skill to teach someone.
Hmm.
Because
Communication, right?
yes,
That's one part of
yeah,
communication.
exactly. And being able to hear someone and really take a second and say, okay, am I hearing you correctly? And then align that back to their goals. So I think as an AE, it really taught me, first of all, shut your mouth and don't assume anything. Right. And just listen. And the other thing, as I mentioned, I was talking to a former colleague of mine not long ago. He said, one of my favorite things about you is you can walk into a room and within 2 minutes, if that, you know who needs to hear what.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the best compliments I've ever gotten, because that means to me, and I actually am very good at that, where I understand how the information needs to be positioned in order for that person to hear what they need to hear, either to feel good about the situation and to make a decision, or to be able to say, no, that doesn't work for me, and feel safe in the room doing so.
And it's not a manipulation, right? I think
No.
it's not a manipulation at all. It's an understanding of that other person. To your point, listening first gives you an opportunity to decide what you say, how you say it, all that sort of stuff. And in most other parts of business, not just in marketing, right? Like you just talked about as an account executive. Obviously, I think the best salespeople are those that do that and are capable of understanding first the needs of the customers, and then individual customers that they're getting in contact with or talking to. Um, so especially now, due to there's so much conversation around sort of the value SDRs and BDRs and the impact that they can have on the sales process, in comparison to just having like a really good message or a really good group of folks that understand both the marketing side, but also just how to then communicate really, really well with the end, customer all the way through the entire process, especially those who are really well versed practitioners of whatever the product, for instance, is they're selling in the in the space that you're in as well. Is there ever a time where you really clashed with sort of the sales side of an organization that you worked with, and how did you sort of maneuver your way around that?
That's a really good question.
She's thinking about what she's allowed to say when it comes
No,
to.
actually, I'm trying to think because I have to say I've been really, really lucky to work with really good salespeople. I think I will say so. We when I worked at Right Management, which was my first job shifting to client side, what I struggled with there was initially the approach was consultative sales, right? It was old school, showing up at their office and
Hmm.
shaking hands and kissing babies and doing whatever you needed to do to make that happen. And we were selling a very particular product, which was in person career consultation post layoff, and it often referred to as outplacement. And then the organization realized that more and more people wanted to engage in online courses. Now, this was, years and years and years ago. So it was a new thing.
Hmm.
And the sales team just could not wrap their brains around how to sell this. They're like,
Hmm.
are people going to pay as much if it's not in person? Like, all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of an uproar for them. And they really, really struggled. And so for me, it was a constant, okay, help me understand, let me help you understand the value, not only to the organization, meaning the ones you're selling to, but also to the people that they're trying to help. Because at
Yep.
the end of the day, if that end user chooses not to engage, we don't get paid. Right. So if we're giving that end user what they want, then we can get paid, and you're going to get more of that commission. In addition, I had to force several of them to go through the experience so that they knew the quality of what was being delivered.
Yeah.
And so I did get a ton of pushback from them in that perspective because they were just not understanding how anyone would ever pay for that. And as you and I both know, online courses now are like big business and the margins are huge.
Yeah.
So, it was a shift in mindset, but that was a transformational shift for society as a whole. So,
I love what you just described about kind of taking them through the process of what it means to be a customer. There was somebody just last week where they they were they are a sleep tech business. So people come and do sleep studies and
yeah.
go through the whole process, right? Where I don't know a lot about it, but I know they're putting sensors on them and they got to sleep in a strange place and all this stuff, and you're paying attention to how they're sleeping that entire night and taking data and stuff. And so the sleep techs, they are there to help facilitate them through this process of, again, being in a strange place, sleeping with tons of crud all over them, and being able to get that data. So obviously they don't want to do that more than once. They need to get it right that first time. And they were talking about how to train the sleep techs that were coming on board, because they were hiring more and more of them, they wanted to have them go through a night of that so that they understood, like,
Mhm.
oh man, how does that mask feel when you put it on them? How does this feel when you pop a little note off? Does it hurt the person's skin? Like, what
Right.
are the things that you can do if the person wakes up? And so that they have some more empathy around that situation, and context around it. And it makes a lot of sense that, obviously, to what you just described, that they would do that as well, and that would answer a lot of questions when you're able to live through the experience as close as possible as your customers, and be really, really helpful, probably both for marketing as well as obviously for sales. um what do you uh, what do you in more recent years, and thinking of like over the last year, and we've had a lot of changes between obviously post-pandemic and folks getting much more used to doing things remotely, and a lot more people just simply being hired remotely, let alone being kind of hybrid and that sort of thing. Um, and and then we've got AI coming, and we're not coming, but we've got AI in all its different forms, and plenty of room still for it to evolve as far as how we use it in general, let alone in marketing and sales and so on. Over the last, like, let's say, couple years, how do you feel you've adapted to sort of the things that have been happening? And what's been the biggest challenge in more recent history when it comes to the marketing side, and maybe launching a campaign, getting in front of customers, that sort of thing?
Well, that's a great question. I think so let's tackle them separately, because there's like two main sort of themes there. One is remote,
Yeah.
and second obviously would be AI. I am by nature an introvert, so working
Mm.
remotely for me is bliss. um, and what I mean by that is, like, I love to talk to people when I'm in my meetings with my teammates or vendors, clients, whomever. But when I'm done at the end of the day, I don't want to talk to anybody. Right. And so it's actually really nice for me to be able to have like a little bit of downtime when I finish my calls and things like that. I have been very, very fortunate to work remotely for the last 3 years.
Okay.
And I did have a stint where I had to do hybrid, 3 days in the office, 2 days out. And while it was great to be in the room with my team, um, those times that you're together are just like meeting, right? And you get done with the day and you're like, I did not get anything on my to-do list done, right? And
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
marketer, that is a constantly expanding list, right? Because when you're in those meetings, you're like, oh, we need this and oh, we need that. And that is great. That's awesome. But when you're at a small organization, that list just continues to grow and exacerbate. So I think hybrid is great, but it's also important to remember how many resources you've got, how those resources are being utilized. And every time you take a resource out of the field, if you will,
Mm.
um, and for how long, what does that mean that they're not able to do that might be more of a high priority? So I would just say, my productivity has never decreased. If in fact, if anything, it's increased working remotely. And actually that kind of leads me into the use of AI. I think for me, I initially was kind of suspect of ChatGPT, and its brethren. But I have really, really started to appreciate those tools for what they help me do in starting to create content. I would never, obviously just like put in a prompt and like, put that out there, no problem. But what I think is really great about the writing tools with AI is they help us to jumpstart where we're headed from an idea perspective, and they can start to build things in that you might not necessarily have included in your initial outline. But I would say also, it's really easy if people are only putting prompts into ChatGPT and like turning out that content, you can tell, right? And so I
In a
think
day and
that
age where markets X, Y, and Z, right? That's all, every single intro.
Exactly. And so I think they are great conversation starters, if you will. But you have to take things over the finish line. I will say I do not trust AI as it pertains to pictures or visuals yet. Some of them, if you're imagining something ethereal and surreal, groovy. But when it comes to needing pictures of happy people looking at their phone or stuff like that, you still sort of get things that are a little bit wild.
You don't like 6 fingers on one hand and 4 fingers on the other?
Or like 3 extra limbs.
I mean, it
Yeah,
grabs people's attention. Come on. Use it to your
true,
advantage there.
true. But it feels a little bit like, the Nigerian prince email where you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing.
it looks synthetic, and you know, when you're talking about humans, you want to believe those humans are exist, right? And when they're
Yeah.
synthetic, it's like, well, might as well just start putting androids in all of our stuff, things that look human but they're not truly, you know, human. I think actually I never thought about it that way, but that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
um is there anything over the last couple of years, you know, amidst all that, where you found like a really, I don't know, unusual or surprising use case for leveraging AI that you did or your team did that just really surprised you?
You know, I have found a couple of really great tools that I've used that will take pre-developed content and turn it into videos or social media posts or you know, things like that, because we get so few readers anymore for, you know, blogs and newsletters and things like that, that it's easier for us to take either old blogs that we've used or you know, blogs that we just produce, so it's good content, and then turn them into videos, because people are more likely to watch those videos if they're, you know, 30 seconds to a minute, and then they
Especially
can
when
link
they're natively posted, right, in the right
exactly, and then
place.
you can point directly back to the blog where they would get more information. So there are some really great tools out there. Some of them are not so great.
What are the great
And I
ones? What are the ones that you like?
The ones that I like are Lumen 5. They are excellent. They are based out of Vancouver. And I've been using them for a long time. And when you pay for the premium, you get access to a ton of B-roll, and there's a lot of transition options. So you can really pull together what feels like a professional video relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And another one actually that is not completely AI driven, but I love it. And I actually just produced a marketing loop for our team to take to the conference they're going to next week, is Biteable. They've got a lot of like animated scenes that you can pull things into, watermarks, all kinds of little things, but it's really great because you can literally just give it a script and it'll pull together something for you. You can go in and then make tweaks and whatever, but it's actually pretty great.
That's awesome. And is there how have you found over the last couple of years, because you've been in, like you said, the technology space one way or another, um how have you found over the last few years folks are measuring success for their marketing, their campaigns? Has it been changing at all? I've been some of what I've experienced has been that it's evolving and changing, but uh, it's there's a lot of discussions I've been seeing also on LinkedIn around folks, you know, shifting their mindset from what was important is important to a particular group within the organization, a particular group of stakeholders, but ultimately isn't the best only subset of data to be looking at, or subset of information to quantify and qualify the impact that marketing is having on the business.
Yeah.
Have you seen that sort of evolve? What are you seeing folks focus on within the organizations you've been a part of the last few years?
That's a great question. You know, I the last few organizations that I've worked with were on the smaller end because they were in their sort of like building phase. So like post Series A, still very much in, you know, the process of um aligning and confirming product market fit.
Hmm.
So our KPIs are very different than, let's say, like an Oracle who is established and, you know, has their own separate team that's focused on demand gen, and that their sales process is very, very lengthy. The organizations that I'm working with right now and have worked with in the past few years are focused on brand awareness, first and foremost, visibility in the market. So even going beyond brand awareness, um, and building credibility for sure. And then obviously driving leads. So it's actually, if you just want to break it down, it's twofold. It's brand awareness and then driving leads, right? And because every opportunity you get, you need to, you know, as you know, you have to fill that funnel as much as you can. And when you're young, that funnel is not very full. So every single opportunity becomes very, very important. So for us right now at Investify, where I'm working at the moment, we are very, very focused on building brand awareness and credibility in the market. We have a very different approach to what we do, and the space is very young, and there's a lot of blue ocean. So we need to get out ahead of everyone, and we are out ahead of everyone, but we want to put, even further lengths between us and the competition. And
Yep.
so our main focus right now is market research, to confirm the way that we approach things, and that in fact our unique selling proposition is absolutely in alignment with what the market needs. And we'll actually be turning that out as a white paper and executive summary sometime in the next month. But on top of that, we've also been doing a lot of PR. And I know that PR is very difficult to capture in regards to the impact. But what I can tell you personally, and that my sales team has also said, is that every time we have either an article that gets posted and picked up, or we do an announcement of some sort, we see an uptick in demo requests. So the awareness is there, and it's definitely working, because the moment it's not just you doing the posting, but let's say someone else is picking it up, then for some reason there's that additional level of credibility. What I will say is that I am speaking with my head of sales, and we're trying to outline what's the difference between an MQL and an SQL. But, to be totally honest, I'm also focused on how well are we moving people through the funnel, right? So, the process to get people into that funnel right now is very minimal. But as a product marketer, I'm also thinking, okay, as a sales team, do you have all of the tools that you need to help move them to sale?
For sure.
And
Yeah.
every time you do a session with them, are you doing something different? Right? Are you delivering more value every step of the way? And so, I try not to insert myself too much, but I've asked, like, hey, can you guys give me a demo? I want to see what this looks like from a customer perspective. And fortunately, I work with an amazing head of biz dev and sales, who is an excellent partner, and is actually like, listen, I will give you as much of my budget next year as you want, so that we can just turn this into an engine. And that's the thing, is I think as a marketer, you have to work well with sales, first and foremost, and then your second biggest partner should be the technical team.
Let's think in terms of like quick wins, right? In my
Yeah.
experience, we're always having conversations with the heads of marketing who, when you have a discussion around what we should help do and support and get behind, or even talk strategically, there's always this concern of like, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take to actually bear any fruit, or let us know if it's even working in the first place, and get us, the feedback we need in order to adjust. And so I'm a big proponent of balancing like these I don't want to call them long-term perspective, long-term wins, but basically knowing the things you got to have enough time to let them soak and do their thing and optimize and so on, versus identifying, well, what are some quick wins we can do as well, that we can look at them and know that these are things that we can get done in the next 15 days, 30 days, 45 days. Have you do you have a story of any sort of time that you ran into that, where it was like, oh, let's come up with some quick wins here while we set the stage for, the long-term stuff that needs to happen as well?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I have a couple of stories actually, but the first one that comes to mind actually was when I started at Buxy Payments, which was a couple of jobs ago. And they were focused on cross-border payments in real time.
Hmm.
Um, and they were based in Canada, which is where I was living at the time. And um, when I joined as VP of product marketing, and the CEO said, listen, I need you to create a brand. I've got a logo. Can you do that? Like, just from the ground up? And I was like, sure. Because I realized during that job that I am a builder, right? I like to be able to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty, and I'll build a team and we can do great things together, but I want to be a part of seeing that come to fruition.
Sure.
And so like a really quick win was having to reskin the website in that new look and feel, which I did in less than 6 weeks, because we had to go to a major conference in Amsterdam. And
I was about to
then
say, when you talk about redoing a website, I was like, it's a quick win, but even 6 weeks, I mean, yes, that's definitely
yeah,
a
I
quick
mean,
win,
like
big win.
and for a website, like this was going from, and I have like screenshots of it because the original website was so bad. But we had this original version, and then we reskinned with the new logo and new sort of look and feel. And
Yeah.
then another 6 weeks later, we had another major conference, so we had to have something to go live. And that's so literally rebuilding from the ground up in less than 12 weeks a website that was compelling and easy to navigate and had all of the content and had the new look and feel. 12 weeks may not seem like a quick win, but in the grand scheme of things, that I moved mountains. Let's just put it that way. And then on top of it, I had engaged a PR firm at the same time. So we were in the process of getting articles and posts out. They were helping secure interviews for our CEO. So we were starting to see some quick wins pop up there. And to be honest, I work with a PR firm that now that I've worked with several times before. And they are so good at what they do that I literally just need to have, like a half an hour conversation with them, get them to the website and provide them some more content. And they immediately understand, like, okay, here's the the USP, here's the value and the benefit, here's how we're going to market, here's what we don't want to talk about. And then they go out and they find the opportunities really, really quickly. So for me, PR tends to be a quick win utilization tool. I will also say though, doing anything you can to help people see the value and the benefit that marketing is delivering is really helpful, because exactly to your point, a lot of what we do feels behind the scenes. So when I first started at Investify, there was a lot of work that needed to be done from a foundational perspective. They had just rebranded, but they didn't have an updated pitch deck, and they didn't have, an updated messaging framework, and all these sort of like different pieces and parts that are foundational, but can take a long time.
Yeah.
I won't lie, Fiverr, amazing. Like, I found amazing designers on there, sent them our pitch deck, came back, it looked beautiful. But you have to, in a role like mine, be a driver, right? So you find those things and you push those things out to the teams, and you're like, hey, by the way, we're doing this. There's other stuff in the hopper and it's coming, but I want you to see the cool things that we're pushing out. And when they see those things, whether it's a post on LinkedIn or someone, an external article, or they see, the updated pitch deck and they see the vision for where we're taking things with the brand, people start to get excited, not only internally, but externally. And so I think it's important to keep sharing those quick wins internally to get people to say, okay, yeah, I can see, the power and the value behind marketing, even if some of the things you're doing take 3 months to get done.
I love that. And again, as I started to go, I want to know more about how she accomplished this and did that. You let me know. So that was good. In a minute or less, are you able to share with me what do you think makes for a successful marketer? Like, think about Sarah and her experience and all the time that you've got and the institutional knowledge. What do you believe is the secret to making a successful marketer these days?
Well, it's not a sexy answer, but I'll just be really honest. I think someone who is well-rounded, and a lot of people specialize, and that's great. But I had a great conversation with one of my colleagues years ago, and she was like, I just don't want to do this particular activity. And I said, so tell me this, where do you want to take your career? And she said, what do you mean? I said, do you want to be a leader? And she said, yeah. And I said, if you can't tell anyone beneath you how to do what you expect them to do, or you don't know how to know what excellence is or what poor performance is, how do you expect to be able to not only improve that person as they grow in their career, but how do you deliver results back to your executive team? How do you know how to stretch things, right? And she was like, oh God, I never thought about it that way. And I said, so that's, like, you may not like what you're being tasked with doing, but knowing how to do it and knowing how to uh
Measures if it's good or not, like you said, right?
exactly, measure performance is really, I think that's important. And so being a well-rounded marketer, you don't have to know everything, right? That's why you hire agencies, or that's why you hire a specialized person. But if you don't know, then you're never going to be able to be a good leader and build a great team.
I love that answer. Now I'm going to give you a chance to do something here. Okay. Now's the time where you can ask me one question.
Yeah.
And it cannot be about the name Secret Sushi for the business.
Okay.
Because that's one of the most common questions I get. And I know if I ask anybody else, it's going to be like, well, I'm going to reveal it here, and then it's going to happen on the next podcast. It's going to happen on the next podcast. And I could tell you in secret. That's all good. If somebody wants to know, they can ask me in secret. But do you have one question about marketing or any of this conversation that you'd be wanting to ask me?
I would love to know what amongst the sessions that you've done has been the most interesting learning.
So what you're talking about, right, and the listeners don't know, is I've been interviewing VPs of marketing, CMOs, leaders of marketing in many different organizations, specifically in B2B organizations in tech and software, and talking about them in general around a whole bunch of different topics related to lead gen and content marketing and all kinds of stuff. And I think the most interesting thing that I have found, I would say two. One, how much marketers enjoy talking about marketing, where it feels an awful lot like folks are be like, oh, why do you want to talk to me, right? But no, like they're like, oh, you want to talk about marketing? I mean, you said it earlier. You love what you do, and generally speaking, as long as the companies who employ these people are good to them, they enjoy what they do. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I walk around town sometimes and my brain is thinking in all the terms of, all the marketing terms and the channels, and paying attention to what's going on in the news with the frame of marketing and sales and business all the time, right? So I think what I found is marketers love to talk about marketing, and they light up when they talk about marketing. And I think the other thing is, how many companies that you talk to that you think are doing the same thing or in a similar space, who are approaching marketing in completely different ways. And so it's been what's been enlightening for me, because I hear them describe something where I was like, oh, it's like running, I don't know if you've heard that these days that we are training either, AI bots, like software bots, virtual bots, and we're even training real physical robots by taking them through thousands or millions of scenarios within the software, right? So if you have a robot arm that you want to train to figure out how to pick up things, where in all the instances of doing it, the blocks or the boxes or whatever could be in any different configuration, and they've got to problem solve. Well, the easiest way to teach them that is, or not the easiest way, but one of the ways that they've been teaching folks that is essentially virtually make them feel that they're in the real world, but they're actually in a virtual world, and running them through a simulation. And when you do that, you can just turn the clock faster. So you can run them through a 10-minute task in 2 seconds if you want, and then do it over and over and over again. And they start to learn, oh, in that situation, I should have done this. And in that situation, I should have done that. Right. So when you talk with folks, and like for you and all the experience that you've had working at multiple companies, what happens eventually is you get institutional knowledge that you start to gain from having those conversations. I become I'm a good marketer from all the years of working with multiple clients, but I'm even better because I'm hearing real world things that are going on, from the folks that I'm talking to, for the conversation I've had with you about how you solved this particular problem or how you did that, which is also why, and thank you very much, I'm doing this podcast in this way now compared to the way I was doing before, because I want that to be what everybody gets from listening to this. So it's as if I paid you to ask that question. But those are the things that stand out to me.
Cool.
Sarah, where can folks find you and connect with you? I can send them right to your house. You said, right? You said they can come over and knock right at your door and come visit.
I mean, if they want to help me unpack, they're welcome. Yeah, definitely find me on LinkedIn. You can also go to investify.co and just click on team and find me there. Yeah, feel free to reach out, connect. Happy to chat about anything marketing related or otherwise.
And I encourage people to do that. Sarah, thank you for joining me. I super appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.